My son pushed me away from the family table. "Why did you come here? Only my wife's parents are invited. Leave." I silently stood up and left. The next day I took their house for myself. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had spent 37 years building a life I thought was solid. My husband Robert and I raised our son Brad in a modest home in Sacramento, teaching him values we believed would last forever: respect, gratitude, family loyalty. When Robert passed away 5 years ago, Brad became the center of my world, my only child, my legacy. For 3 years after Robert's death, I poured everything into helping Brad and his wife Tiffany. When they struggled to afford a house in the rising California market, I didn't hesitate. I took out $180,000 from my retirement savings and Robert's life insurance, nearly everything I had, and gave it to them for a down payment. "Mom will pay you back," Brad promised, hugging me tightly. "You're saving our future." I watched them move into that beautiful 4-bedroom house in Roseville with joy in my heart. I helped them paint the nursery. I brought groceries every week. I babysat my granddaughter Emma whenever they needed. Wasn't that what mothers did? But over the past 6 months, something shifted. Tiffany's smiles became thinner, more forced. Phone calls went unreturned. When I suggested weekend visits, there were always excuses. "We're busy, Mom," Brad would say, his voice distant. "Tiffany's parents are coming over." I told myself it was normal. Young couples needed space. They were building their own traditions. Then came Thanksgiving. I arrived at their house at 5 o'clock, carrying my famous apple pie and a bottle of wine. The driveway was packed with cars I didn't recognize. Through the large front windows, I could see the dining room table beautifully set, candles glowing, people laughing. My heart swelled. They'd invited me to a big family gathering. I rang the doorbell, balancing the pie in one hand. Tiffany opened the door, and her face went pale. "Margaret," she said, not Mom, as she usually called me. Just Margaret. "What are you doing here?" "Brad invited me for Thanksgiving dinner," I said, confused by her cold tone. "I brought pie." She glanced over her shoulder nervously. There must have been a misunderstanding." Before I could respond, Brad appeared behind her. His face flushed red when he saw me. "Mom, why are you here?" The question hit me like a slap. Why was I here? You called me Tuesday and said come for Thanksgiving at 5. "No, I didn't." His voice was sharp, cutting. "I said we were having Tiffany's parents over. This is a dinner for her family." I stood there on the porch, pie growing heavy in my hands, trying to understand. Through the doorway, I could see Tiffany's parents seated at the head of my son's table. The table I'd helped them buy, in the house I'd made possible. They were laughing, comfortable, belonging. "But Brad, I'm your mother." "Tiffany's parents were invited," he interrupted, his voice rising. People inside had stopped talking. They were watching now, these strangers in my son's house. "Only her parents, not you." "I don't understand," I whispered. My legs felt weak. "What don't you understand?" Brad's face twisted with an emotion I'd never seen before: contempt. "This is Tiffany's family dinner. You weren't invited. Why did you just show up here?" Tiffany put her hand on his arm, whispering something, but he shook her off. Behind them, Tiffany's mother stood up, watching with what looked like satisfaction. "Brad, please," I tried once more. "Can we talk about this inside?" "No." The word came out like a bullet. "You need to leave, now. This is embarrassing. You're embarrassing me in front of my wife's family." The whole dining room was silent now. 10, maybe 12 people, all staring at the old woman on the porch, rejected by her own son. Tiffany's father shook his head slowly, as if I were some pathetic creature who couldn't take a hint. "Get out," Brad said quietly, but the words carried. "Just go home, Mom." I looked into my son's eyes and saw a stranger. Where was the boy I'd raised? The man I'd sacrificed everything for? Gone. Replaced by this cold, cruel person who valued appearances over his own mother. I said nothing. What could I say? I turned slowly, walked down the porch steps, got into my car. Through the window, I saw Brad close the door. Seconds later, laughter erupted inside. The dinner continued. Without me. As if I'd never existed. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking, tears streaming down my face. Then something else replaced the pain. Something cold and clear. Rage. I drove home in a fog, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The pie sat untouched on the passenger seat, a symbol of my foolishness. How long had I been blind? When exactly had I become disposable to my own son? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small apartment, the one-bedroom place I'd moved to after selling the family home to help Brad, and stared at the ceiling. Every memory played on repeat. The hug after I gave him the money, his promise to pay me back, the way he'd called me the best mom in the world. Had it all been manipulation? Had he simply been waiting until the money was safely in his hands before discarding me? By 3 a.m, I'd reached a terrible conclusion. Yes. Tiffany had orchestrated this. She'd been pulling Brad away from me for months, replacing me with her own parents. And Brad, weak and eager to please his wife, had let it happen. Worse, he'd participated. He'd chosen them over me. But I wasn't just heartbroken. I was furious. At dawn, I made coffee and sat at my small kitchen table. I pulled out the folder I kept in my desk drawer, the one labeled Brad's house. Inside were copies of every document from the home purchase 3 years ago. I'd kept them, sentimental fool that I was, as a reminder of the good I'd done. As I read through the papers, my heart began to pound. The house title. The deed. I pulled out the official county document and read it again. Slowly. Then again. My hands started shaking. But this time, not from grief. The house was in my name. Not Brad's name, not jointly, mine alone. Margaret Ann Wilson, sole owner. How had I forgotten this? My lawyer, Robert's old friend Tom Henderson, had insisted on it 3 years ago when I'd explained I was giving Brad money for a house. "Margaret, you're taking out your life savings," Tom had said firmly. "Don't just hand over cash. If you're paying for it, your name goes on the title. You can always transfer it to Brad later. But this protects you." I'd agreed, thinking it was just a formality, a temporary measure. I'd fully intended to sign the house over to Brad once they were settled. But then Robert's death anniversary came, and I got sick for 2 months, and time passed, and I'd simply forgotten. The house payments came out of an account I'd set up for Brad. He paid the mortgage, the utilities, the taxes. For all practical purposes, it was his house. Except legally, it wasn't. Legally, my son and his wife were living in my house, my property, and they'd just thrown me out of it like trash. I sat back in my chair, the document trembling in my hands. What did this mean? Could I actually do something with this? Or would it make me just as cruel as they'd been? For a moment, doubt crept in. He was still my son. Emma was my granddaughter. If I took action, I'd lose them forever. Could I live with that? Then I remembered his face, the contempt, the way he'd publicly humiliated me in front of strangers. "Get out." The laughter that followed, Tiffany's mother's satisfied smile. No, I wasn't being cruel. I was taking back what was mine. They'd made their choice. Now I'd make mine. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Tom Henderson's number. He was semi-retired now, but he'd always told me to call if I needed anything. It was 7 in the morning, early, but Tom was an early riser. He answered on the third ring. "Margaret, everything okay?" "Tom, I need your help," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's about Brad's house. The one I bought 3 years ago. The one in your name? What about it?" I took a deep breath. "I want to take it back." There was a pause. "Take it back?" "Margaret, what happened?" I told him everything. The gradual distancing, the unreturned calls, and finally, last night's humiliation. My voice cracked only once when I described Brad's face. Tom listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Margaret, I'm sorry. No mother should experience that." Another pause. "Are you sure about this? Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your relationship with Brad will be over." "It's already over, Tom," I said quietly. "He ended it last night. He just doesn't know it yet." "All right then." Tom's voice became businesslike. "We'll need to meet Monday morning. Bring all your documents. We're going to draft an eviction notice." Eviction. The word hung in the air. My son, evicted from his home. By his own mother. "Monday," I confirmed. "Thank you, Tom." I hung up and sat in the growing morning light, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Powerful. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning came slowly. I spent the weekend in my apartment, ignoring 3 calls from Brad, probably calling to make sure I wasn't going to embarrass him further. I didn't answer. Let him wonder. Tom Henderson's office was in downtown Sacramento, a modest suite in an old building where Robert and I had signed our wills decades ago. Walking through that door felt like crossing a threshold. Once I did this, there would be no pretending things could go back to normal. I crossed it anyway. Tom had already prepared preliminary documents. He sat across from me, reading glasses perched on his nose, looking every bit the grandfather figure he was, except his eyes were sharp and his tone was all business. "Before we proceed, Margaret, I need you to understand the legal reality," he said. "The house is yours, completely. Brad has no legal claim to it. You've been allowing him to live there and pay the mortgage, essentially as a tenant, though there was no formal rental agreement. That actually works in our favor." "How long will eviction take?" I asked. "In California? We file a notice, give them 30 days to vacate. If they refuse, we go to court. With clear title in your name and no rental agreement, the judge will rule in your favor. 2 to 3 months total, maybe less if they don't fight it." "They'll fight it," I said quietly. "Tiffany won't go without a battle." Tom nodded. "Then we prepare for battle. I'll draft the official notice today. We'll have it served by a process server, makes it formal, creates a paper trail. Once Brad receives it, he'll understand this is real." I signed the authorization forms, my hand steady. Tom promised to call once the notice was ready to be served. As I left his office, I felt lightheaded. Not from fear, from relief. I was finally doing something. The notice was served on Wednesday afternoon. I wasn't there, of course. A process server named Julie handled it, a professional woman who told me later that Brad had answered the door, read the first page, and gone white. He kept saying, "This can't be real," Julie reported. His wife came to the door and started screaming at me. "I've been doing this 15 years, Mrs. Wilson." That was quite a reaction. I could imagine it. Tiffany's perfect world crumbling. The house she'd been showing off to her parents, the house she thought was hers, suddenly revealed to be mine. That evening, my phone exploded. First, Brad called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice shaking. Mom, what the hell is this? Some eviction notice? This is our house. Call me back, now. Then Tiffany called. I didn't answer that either. Her voicemail was venomous. You bitter old woman. You can't do this. We'll fight you. That house is Brad's. You gave it to him. This is elder abuse in reverse. Elder abuse? I almost laughed. What did she think they'd done to me? More calls followed. Brad again. Then a number I didn't recognize. Probably Tiffany's parents. I turned off my phone and sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling something close to satisfaction. Thursday morning, I turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages. Most were from Brad, ranging from angry to pleading. Mom, we need to talk about this. You can't just kick us out. What about Emma? You're making your granddaughter homeless. This is insane. Call me back. Fine. Don't answer. But you're going to regret this. That last one made me pause. A threat? From my own son? Then came the email. From Tiffany's personal account, sent at 2 a.m. Subject line, "The truth about you." I opened it, my stomach tight. Margaret, since you won't answer our calls, let me be crystal clear. That house is ours. Brad has paid the mortgage for 3 years. We've put $40,000 into renovations. We have equity. If you think some piece of paper means you can steal our home, you're wrong. Brad's father would be ashamed of you. Ashamed? What kind of mother does this? We've done nothing but welcome you into our lives, and this is how you repay us? By trying to make us homeless? You're a vindictive, selfish old woman who can't handle that Brad has a wife and a real family now. You're jealous. It's pathetic. Withdraw this eviction, or we'll make your life hell. We have rights. We have a lawyer, too, and everyone will know what kind of person you really are. Tiffany. I read it twice, then printed it and added it to my growing folder. Every threat, every message. Tom had told me to document everything. Welcome me into their lives? She'd spent 6 months pushing me out, and Brad had helped her do it. And now, faced with consequences, they were playing victim. But that line about Robert, that Brad's father would be ashamed, that cut deep. Would he? Would Robert think I was going too far? I looked at our wedding photo on my bookshelf. Robert's kind eyes, his gentle smile. What would he say? Then I remembered. Robert had been the one who taught Brad about integrity, about keeping promises, about respecting your parents. And Brad had violated every lesson. No. Robert would be ashamed of Brad. Not me. I picked up my phone and called Tom. They're threatening me, I said. I have documentation. Good, Tom replied. Let them threaten. Every word helps our case. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said. And I was. Because I'd found something I thought I'd lost that Thanksgiving night. I'd found my spine. Tom filed the formal eviction petition with the court on Friday morning. By law, Brad and Tiffany had 30 days to vacate voluntarily before we'd proceed to a hearing. The clock was ticking. I didn't expect them to go quietly. I was right. Saturday afternoon, they showed up at my apartment. I'd been reading in my small living room when I heard aggressive knocking. Through the peephole, I saw Brad, Tiffany, and, to my surprise, Tiffany's parents, Richard and Patricia Meadows. They'd brought reinforcements. I considered not opening the door, but hiding felt like weakness. I'd started this. I'd finish it. I opened the door but kept the chain lock on. What do you want? We need to talk, Brad said. His face was haggard, eyes red-rimmed. He'd been crying? Good. Let him feel a fraction of what I'd felt. Mom, please, let us in. No, say what you need to say from there. Tiffany pushed forward. You're being ridiculous. You can't kick us out of our own home. It's not your home. I said calmly. It's mine. The deed says so. Your lawyer should have explained that by now. Richard Meadows stepped into view, his face red with anger. Now you listen here, lady. Our daughter and son-in-law have put years into that house. They have equity. They have rights. They have 30 days, I replied. After that, I'll see you in court. Court? Patricia's voice was shrill. You'd really drag your own son to court? What kind of monster are you? I felt my calm facade crack slightly. What kind of son publicly humiliates his mother? Throws her out like garbage in front of strangers? I looked directly at Brad. You made your choice, Brad. Now live with it. Brad's face crumpled. Mom, I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. It was a stressful day, and Tiffany's parents were there, and I made a mistake. A bad mistake. But you can't destroy our whole life over one mistake. One mistake? My voice rose despite myself. You've been pushing me away for 6 months. Unreturned calls, canceled visits, excuses. You've replaced me with them. I gestured toward the meadows. That wasn't one mistake, Brad. That was a choice. A deliberate, repeated choice. Because you're suffocating, Tiffany burst out. You show up unannounced. You criticize how I raise Emma. You act like that house is yours. She stopped abruptly, realizing what she'd said. It is mine, I said softly. That's the point you keep missing. It literally is my house. We'll sue you, Richard threatened. For the renovations, for the mortgage payments, you'll owe us thousands. Sue me then, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. My lawyer says you won't win. You were living there voluntarily, paying below market rent essentially. But please, waste your money on lawyers. I don't care anymore. You don't care? Brad's voice broke. What about Emma? Your granddaughter? You're willing to never see her again over this? And there it was. The trump card. The weapon they'd been saving. It hurt. God, it hurt. Emma's little face, her laugh, the way she called me Mimi. I'd be losing her too, but I'd been losing her already. They'd been cutting me out for months. This just made it official. You used Emma against me, I said quietly. Every time I wanted to visit, you held her like a carrot. Maybe next weekend, Mom. We'll see. You rationed my own granddaughter like I was some stranger who needed to earn access. So don't stand there now and pretend you're protecting her. You're protecting yourselves. This is insane, Tiffany screamed. Brad, tell her. Tell her she's insane. But Brad just stood there, tears running down his face, and I realized he finally understood. I wasn't bluffing. This was really happening. 30 days, I repeated. After that, the sheriff will remove you. We'll fight this, Patricia shrieked. We'll tell everyone what you're doing. Your friends, your church, everyone will know you're a heartless. Tell them, I interrupted. Tell them I gave my son $180,000 and he repaid me by throwing me out of his house on Thanksgiving. See who they sympathize with. I closed the door. They stood outside for another 5 minutes, shouting, pleading, threatening. I sat on my couch and let the words wash over me. Eventually, they left. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely did, and sat in the quiet. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me exhausted. For the next 3 days, I didn't answer my phone. I didn't check email. I ordered groceries online and stayed in my apartment, reading books, watching old movies, trying to quiet my mind. Tom called Tuesday to check on me. How are you holding up? Tired, I admitted. But okay. They came to my apartment. It got ugly. I'm not surprised. The court date is set for January 15th if they don't vacate voluntarily. Think you can make it until then? I don't have a choice, I said. But the truth was, I needed this break. I needed time to rebuild my resolve. because the worst, I suspected, was still to come. The following week, the tactics changed. No more angry confrontations. Instead, I received a text from Brad that was heartbreaking in its simplicity. "Mom, can we please just talk? Just you and me. Coffee somewhere neutral. I miss you." I stared at that message for a long time. I miss you. 3 words designed to crack my armor. And they almost worked. But I'd learned something over these past weeks. Sometimes missing someone isn't enough. Sometimes love isn't enough. Not when respect is gone. I didn't respond. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Not from a lawyer, from Emma's preschool. Apparently, they were having a grandparents' day next Friday, and Emma had specifically requested I come. Tiffany had signed the permission slip and even added a handwritten note. "Margaret, Emma asks about you every day. Please come. She needs her Mimi." This doesn't have to affect your relationship with her. It was brilliant, really. Using Emma as bait. Making me the villain who'd miss her granddaughter's special day. I called the preschool directly and spoke to Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson. "I received the invitation," I said carefully. "I need to know, did Emma really request me? Or did her mother suggest you send this?" There was an uncomfortable pause. Mrs. Meadows mentioned that there had been some family tension. She thought Emma seeing you might help bridge things. So Tiffany had orchestrated it. Of course she had. "Thank you for your honesty," I said. "Please tell Emma that Mimi loves her very much, but I won't be attending." It broke my heart to say it. But I couldn't let them manipulate me with Emma. Not again. That afternoon, I decided I needed someone to talk to. Someone outside the situation. I thought of my friend Claire. We'd known each other for 25 years through our church women's group. If anyone would understand, it would be her. We met at a small cafe near her house. Claire took one look at my face and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Margaret, my God, what's happened?" I told her everything. The money, the house, the Thanksgiving incident, the eviction. She listened without interrupting, her expression moving from shock to anger to sadness. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. "Those ungrateful..." She stopped herself. "No, I'm not going to curse in public. But Margaret, you did the right thing." "Did I?" I asked, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at me. "I'm evicting my own son." "What kind of mother does that?" "The kind who's been used and discarded," Claire said firmly. "Listen to me. I've watched you give and give and give to Brad for years. After Robert died, you made Brad your whole world, and he took advantage of that. He and that wife of his..." "You don't like Tiffany?" Claire hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I've always thought she was controlling. The way she monitors Brad's phone, the way she decides who he sees and when. That's not healthy. And pushing you out? That's classic behavior. She wants Brad all to herself, with her family as the only acceptable parents in their life. It was validating to hear someone else see what I'd been afraid to acknowledge." "So you think I'm doing the right thing?" I asked. "I think you're protecting yourself," Claire said. "And there's nothing wrong with that. You gave them everything, and they gave you nothing but contempt. You're not being cruel, Margaret. You're being sane." We talked for another hour. Claire shared that her own daughter had gone through a phase of pushing her away after marriage, though nothing as extreme as Brad. "Sometimes adult children need to learn that parents aren't doormats," she said. "You're teaching Brad a very expensive lesson." When we parted, I felt stronger. Claire had offered to spread the word among our church friends, to make sure people knew the truth before Tiffany could spin her version. I hesitated, then agreed. I wasn't going to hide what was happening. That evening, I received another call from Brad. This time, I answered. "Mom, thank God. Please, we need to. No, Brad, I interrupted. We don't need to do anything. You made your choice. I've made mine. The court date is January 15th. Either be out by then, or the judge will order you out. You'd really do this? His voice was small, defeated. You'd really take everything from us? You took everything from me first, I said quietly. You just didn't realize I had the power to take something back. I hung up before he could respond. The silence that followed was profound. No more texts, no more calls, no more manipulation attempts. They were regrouping, I knew, planning their next move. But for now, I had peace. I sat in my apartment that night, drinking tea, and realized something. I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt free. Whatever came next, I was ready. The following Saturday morning, I was washing dishes when my building's intercom buzzed. The doorman's voice crackled through. Mrs. Wilson, you have visitors. Brad Wilson and his wife. They say they need to speak with you urgently, something about a peace offering. A peace offering. My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity won out. What were they planning now? Send them up, I said. I dried my hands, smoothed my hair, and prepared myself. When the knock came, I opened the door fully this time. No chain lock. I wanted them to see I wasn't afraid. Brad stood there holding a bouquet of flowers. My favorite, white roses. Tiffany was beside him, dressed elegantly, her makeup perfect. She was even smiling. Mom, Brad said softly, we came to apologize. Really apologize. Can we come in? I studied them both. Brad looked sincere, his eyes pleading. Tiffany's smile seemed warm, though something about it didn't quite reach her eyes. You have 15 minutes, I said, stepping aside. They sat on my small couch while I took the armchair across from them. Brad set the flowers on the coffee table between us, a physical representation of their supposed olive branch. Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking, Brad began, about everything, about how we treated you, especially at Thanksgiving. It was unforgivable. I was cruel. I was wrong. He paused and I saw tears forming. You're my mother. You gave us everything, and I threw you away like you meant nothing. It was a good speech. Rehearsed, probably, but delivered with apparent sincerity. I'm sorry, too, Tiffany added, her voice soft and reasonable. I realize now that I was territorial. I wanted my parents to feel important, and I pushed you out in the process. That wasn't fair to you or to Brad. Emma needs her Mimi. They waited for my response. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch. Brad leaned forward. We want to make this right. We'll do better. We'll have you over every week. You'll have your own key. Emma can spend weekends with you, whatever you need. All we ask, Tiffany said, still smiling that plastic smile, is that you withdraw the eviction. Let's just forget this whole ugly mess happened and start over. Family should forgive family, right? Ah, there it was. The real purpose of this visit. So to be clear, I said slowly, you're apologizing, but only if I give you back the house. It's our home, Mom, Brad said, his voice taking on an edge. We've made it our home. We can't just leave. You have 3 weeks to find somewhere else, I pointed out. Tiffany's smile faltered. Margaret, be reasonable. Do you know how hard it is to find a place in this market? Especially with our budget? We'd have to move to some apartment, sell half our furniture. You could move into a place like this, I suggested, gesturing around my modest one-bedroom. It's not much, but it's home. Brad's face flushed. We have a child. We can't raise Emma in some tiny apartment. I raised you in an apartment smaller than this, I said quietly. You turned out fine. Or so I thought. That's different, Tiffany snapped, her mask slipping. We have standards. We've built a life. You can't just tear it all down because your feelings got hurt. My feelings got hurt? I felt my voice rise. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You threw me out of my own house. And now you want me to forget it happened? It was one bad night, Brad shouted, standing up. One mistake, and you're destroying our entire life over it. Sit down, Brad, I said coldly. He did, looking shocked at my tone. Tiffany leaned forward, her face hardening. Let me explain something to you, Margaret. If you go through with this eviction, you'll never see Emma again. Never. We'll make sure of it. We'll move out of state if we have to. There it was. The real threat. Not apologetic at all. Threatening me with my own granddaughter. And everyone will know what you did, Tiffany continued, her voice venomous now. Our friends, your church, the whole community. We'll tell them you're a vindictive old woman who couldn't handle her son having his own family. We'll tell them you tried to make your granddaughter homeless. Who do you think they'll believe? The young family trying to build a life, or the bitter mother who can't let go? Brad put his hand on Tiffany's arm, but she shook him off. No, Brad. She needs to hear this. She needs to understand what she'll lose if she doesn't back down. I looked at my son, who couldn't meet my eyes. He was letting his wife threaten me. Worse, he was agreeing with her. Get out, I said quietly. What? Tiffany blinked. Get out of my apartment. Your 15 minutes are up, and your act is over. Mom, please, Brad tried. You came here to manipulate me, I said, standing up. You came here to threaten me with Emma, with my reputation, with everything you think I care about. You didn't come to apologize. You came to win. We're trying to save our family, Tiffany shrieked, jumping to her feet. But you're too stubborn and selfish to see it. I'm saving myself, I replied. From you, both of you. You're toxic, you're manipulative, and I'm done. Tiffany's face contorted with rage. Fine. You want to play hardball, old woman? We'll play hardball. When we're done with you, you'll wish you'd never started this. Brad stood, looking between us, his face pale. Tiff, let's just go. No, she whirled on him. She needs to know she can't treat us like this. We have rights. You have 30 days, I said, opening the door. Use them wisely. They left, Tiffany still muttering threats, Brad looking like a beaten dog. I closed the door and locked it, my hands shaking. For a moment, just a moment, I felt afraid. What if they did take Emma away forever? What if they destroyed my reputation? Then I looked at the white roses on my coffee table, bought specifically to manipulate me, and felt the fear transform into something harder, determination. They'd shown me their true faces. No more pretense, no more fake apologies. Now we could fight honestly. January 15th arrived cold and gray. The court hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock at the Sacramento County Superior Court. I dressed carefully that morning. A navy blue suit, modest jewelry, my hair neatly styled. I wanted to look like what I was, a dignified woman defending her property rights, not a vindictive mother. Tom met me outside the courtroom at 9:30. You ready? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm no matter what they say. Let me do the talking unless the judge asks you a direct question. And Margaret, you're going to win this. The law is completely on your side. We entered the courtroom. Brad and Tiffany were already there with their lawyer, a younger man named Derek Chen, who looked uncomfortable with his clients. Tiffany glared at me with pure hatred. Brad stared at the floor. Behind them sat Richard and Patricia Meadows, there for moral support. Patricia caught my eye and mouthed something that looked like, "Shame on you." Judge Barbara Reeves entered at 10 o'clock sharp. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd seen every kind of family dispute imaginable. She reviewed the case file briefly, then looked up. "This is an unlawful detainer action," she said. "Mrs. Wilson seeks to evict her son and daughter-in-law from a property she owns. Mr. Chen, your response?" Derek Chen stood. Your Honor, we're not disputing that Mrs. Wilson's name is on the deed. However, we argue that she made a gift of the property to her son and daughter-in-law. She gave them $180,000 specifically for this house purchase. They've paid the mortgage, taxes, and insurance for 3 years. They've invested $40,000 in renovations. To now claim it's her property and evict them would constitute unjust enrichment. Do you have documentation of this alleged gift? Judge Reeves asked. We have testimony from my clients and evidence of their financial contributions. But no written gift agreement? No signed document stating Mrs. Wilson intended to give away her property? No, Your Honor. It was a family matter, a mother helping her son. Judge Reeves turned to Tom. Mr. Henderson? Tom stood, perfectly composed. Your Honor, the deed speaks for itself. Mrs. Wilson is the sole legal owner. There was never any gift, written or implied. She provided funds to help with the down payment, yes, but she did so while keeping the property in her name specifically to protect her investment. Her son and daughter-in-law have been living in her property rent-free, essentially. If anything, they owe her for 3 years of below-market occupancy. They've paid the mortgage, Derek Chen protested. They paid to maintain a property they were allowed to live in, Tom countered. That's not the same as ownership. Mrs. Wilson could have charged them market-rate rent of $3,000 per month. Instead, they paid only the mortgage payment of $1,800. She's been subsidizing them for years. Judge Reeves looked at Brad and Tiffany. Mr. Wilson, did you ever have a written agreement with your mother about ownership of this property? Brad stood shakily. No, Your Honor, but she's my mother. She said she was helping us buy a house. I assumed. You assumed, the judge repeated. But did your mother ever explicitly say, this house is yours, or I'm giving you this property? Brad hesitated, glancing at Tiffany. Not in those exact words? Yes or no, Mr. Wilson? No, Your Honor. And did you ever question why the deed was in her name? My mother's lawyer insisted on it, Brad admitted. For protection, he said. But I thought she'd transfer it to us later. Did she promise to transfer it? Another pause. Not explicitly. Tiffany couldn't contain herself anymore. She jumped to her feet. This is ridiculous! She's playing word games. She's my husband's mother. Of course we thought the house was ours. She let us believe it was ours. Mrs. Meadows, sit down, Judge Reeves said sharply. You'll have your chance to testify. But Tiffany was beyond control now. You don't understand what she's doing. She's punishing us because we had Thanksgiving with my parents, because she's a jealous, controlling old woman who can't accept that her son has his own family now. Mrs. Meadows! The judge's voice cracked like a whip. Sit down and be quiet, or I'll hold you in contempt. Derek Chen physically pulled Tiffany back into her seat, whispering urgently. But the damage was done. The judge had seen Tiffany's true nature, the rage, the entitlement, the complete lack of respect. Judge Reeves turned to me. Mrs. Wilson, would you like to address the court? Tom nodded at me. I stood, my voice steady. Your Honor, I gave my son money because I loved him. I kept the house in my name because my late husband's lawyer advised me to protect myself. I never promised to give Brad the property because I wanted to make sure he and his family were stable first. I paused. On Thanksgiving, my son threw me out of that house, my house, in front of strangers because I wasn't invited. He humiliated me. He made clear that I'm not welcome in his life. So yes, I want my property back. I won't be used anymore. The courtroom was silent. Judge Reeves looked at me for a long moment, then at Brad and Tiffany, then at the file before her. I've heard enough, she said. The law here is clear. Mrs. Wilson is the sole legal owner of the property in question. There is no evidence of a gift, no written agreement transferring ownership, and no legitimate grounds to prevent eviction. Mr. and Mrs. Meadows, you have 7 days to vacate the premises. If you fail to do so, the sheriff will enforce this order. 7 days? Derek Chen stood, shocked. Your Honor, that's not enough time. You've had 30 days since the initial notice, Judge Reeves said. You chose to fight rather than prepare to move. 7 days. This court is adjourned. She banged her gavel. Tiffany let out a sound like a wounded animal. Brad just sat there, face blank with shock. I stood, feeling Tom's hand on my shoulder. Let's go, he murmured. As we walked out, Tiffany's voice followed us. You'll regret this. You'll die alone, you miserable bitch. Tom hurried me into the hallway. Behind us, I could hear Richard Meadows shouting at the bailiff. It's over, Tom said. You won. I had won, completely, decisively. So why did I feel so empty? 7 days later, on a frigid January morning, I stood across the street from the house I'd bought 3 years ago. The house that was, once again, legally and practically mine. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. Tiffany's father, Richard, was loading boxes, his face red with exertion and anger. Brad carried furniture with the mechanical movements of someone in shock. Tiffany supervised with Emma on her hip, still throwing hostile glances at the few neighbors who'd come out to watch. I wasn't there to gloat. I was there because Tom had advised me to document the move-out, to ensure they didn't damage property or steal fixtures out of spite. I had a witness with me, Claire, who'd insisted on coming for moral support. Are you sure you want to watch this? Claire asked quietly. I need to, I said. At 11 o'clock, the sheriff's deputy who'd been monitoring the eviction approached me. Mrs. Wilson? They're cleared out. Would you like to inspect the property? I crossed the street on shaking legs. Brad saw me coming and turned away, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. Tiffany, however, marched right up to me. I hope you're happy, she hissed, clutching Emma tighter. You've destroyed your son's life. His credit is ruined because we had to break our lease on a new apartment to move in a week. We've lost thousands. And for what? Your pride? For my dignity, I replied quietly. Something you know nothing about. Emma will never know you, Tiffany said, her final weapon. You'll never see her again. Never watch her grow up. Never be at her graduation or her wedding. You chose a house over your granddaughter. It hurt. God, it hurt. I looked at Emma, who was watching me with confused 3-year-old eyes. Mimi? She said uncertainly. My heart broke. But I'd made my choice, and I'd live with it. You chose first, I said to Tiffany. You chose to push me out. You chose to have Brad humiliate me. You made me choose between being used and being respected. I chose respect. Tiffany's face contorted with rage, but Brad finally intervened. Tiff, just get in the car. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd been waiting for. Shame. Deep, genuine shame. Mom, he started. The keys, I said, holding out my hand. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the house keys. As he placed them in my palm, his hand lingered for a moment. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. And I meant it. I could see he was sorry now. But sorry didn't undo the damage. Sorry didn't heal the wound. He walked away, and I watched my son drive off with his wife and child, possibly forever. The deputy handed me the inspection form. Everything looks intact. A few nail holes in the walls, normal wear and tear. They left it cleaner than most. I walked through the house alone, Claire waiting outside to give me space. It was strange seeing it empty. The nursery where I'd painted clouds, the kitchen where I'd imagined future family dinners, the living room where I'd been thrown out that Thanksgiving night. All empty now, all mine. I found a piece of paper on the kitchen counter. A note in Brad's handwriting. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know if I can forgive myself. You were right about everything. Tiffany and I got caught up in trying to impress her parents, trying to look successful, trying to have the perfect, life. And we used you to get there, then discarded you when we didn't need you anymore. I understand now what Dad tried to teach me about family, about respect, about gratitude. I failed every lesson. I failed him. I failed you. I don't know if we'll ever speak again. I hope someday we might. But I understand if that never happens. The house is yours. It always was. I'm sorry I made you fight for what was already yours. Your son, Brad. I read it twice, tears streaming down my face. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my purse. 2 weeks later, I put the house on the market. I didn't want to live there. Too many painful memories. But I didn't want to keep it empty either. It sold in 4 days for $580,000, well above asking price. After paying off the remaining mortgage and Tom's legal fees, I cleared $320,000, more than I'd started with, more than I'd given Brad. I used part of the money to upgrade to a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with a view of the river. I furnished it exactly how I wanted, my taste, my choices, my life. The rest I put in investments and savings, security, independence, freedom. I'd won, completely and utterly. I had my money, my dignity, and my peace back. The only thing I'd lost was a son who'd already lost himself, and some losses, I was learning, were acceptable prices for survival. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and my new life took shape in ways I'd never expected. My 2-bedroom apartment became a sanctuary. I decorated with artwork I'd always loved but never bought because I was saving money. Money I'd ended up giving away anyway. I joined a book club. I started taking watercolor classes at the community center. I traveled to San Francisco for a weekend with Claire, something I'd never done because I was always too busy or needed to be available for Brad. I was, to my surprise, happy. Claire noticed it immediately. "You're glowing," she said one afternoon over lunch. "I haven't seen you like this in years." She was right. The constant low-level anxiety I'd carried, worrying about Brad, about being a good enough mother, about being included in his life, was gone. I slept better. I laughed more. I'd forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. Through the church network, I heard whispers about Brad and Tiffany's situation. At first, I told people I didn't want to know. But human nature being what it is, information found its way to me anyway. They'd moved into a small apartment in a less desirable part of Roseville. The rent was manageable, but tight on Brad's salary. Tiffany had to go back to work part-time, something she'd sworn she'd never do while Emma was young. Childcare costs ate up most of her income. The Meadows, Richard and Patricia, had apparently offered to help financially, but with strings attached, control over how Brad and Tiffany lived, where they went, what decisions they made. Tiffany, who'd been so eager to impress her parents, now found herself trapped by their generosity. "She's miserable," Claire reported after running into a mutual acquaintance. "Apparently, she complains constantly. The apartment is too small, the neighbors are too loud, Brad works too much. And her parents come over unannounced all the time, criticizing how she raises Emma." I felt a twinge of, not quite satisfaction, but something close. Poetic justice, perhaps. Tiffany had pushed me out to make room for her parents, and now she was drowning in their presence. "And Brad?" I asked, despite myself. Claire's face softened. "He's struggling. Someone from his work said he's withdrawn, barely talks to anyone. He's apparently seen a therapist a few times." I felt a complicated mix of emotions at that. Part of me, the mother part that would never fully die, worried about him. But another part, the part he'd wounded so deeply, thought, good. He should struggle. He should face what he did. In July, I received an unexpected letter. Brad's handwriting, forwarded from my old apartment. "Mom, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know I have no right to ask anything of you ever again. I just wanted you to know that Tiffany and I are in marriage counseling. The therapist asked me to write letters to people I've hurt, even if I never send them. but I decided to send this one. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, about how I treated you. The therapist says I was triangulated between you and Tiffany. And instead of setting boundaries with both of you, I chose one side and burned the other. I chose wrong. Tiffany and I are trying to fix things, but it's hard. She's angry all the time now, at me, at her parents, at the situation. She says I should have fought harder to keep the house. She doesn't understand that we had no legal right to it. She still thinks you were just being vindictive. I don't think that anymore. I think you were protecting yourself from people who took advantage of your love. People like me. Emma asks about you sometimes. I tell her Mimi loves her very much, but lives far away now. I don't know what else to say. I hope you're happy, Mom. I really do. You deserve to be happy. Brad. I read it 3 times, crying quietly in my sunny living room. Then I put it in a drawer with his first letter. I didn't respond. What would I say? I forgive you? I didn't. Not fully. Come back into my life? I couldn't trust him again, but I kept the letter. Maybe someday it would mean something different. In August, I did something I'd dreamed about for years. I booked a 3-week trip to Italy. First class. Nice hotels. Guided tours of Florence, Rome, Venice. I spent money on myself without guilt, without thinking about who else might need it. I sent postcards to Claire, to a few church friends, to my elderly cousin in Portland. I didn't send one to Brad, but I thought about him sometimes, standing in ancient cathedrals, wondering if he was okay, hoping he was learning what he needed to learn. My new life wasn't perfect. I still had moments of profound loneliness, especially around holidays. I still missed Emma with an ache that never quite went away, but I was free. Free from manipulation, from being used, from living my life in service to people who didn't appreciate it. I'd paid a steep price for that freedom. But looking at my life now, my independence, my peace, my self-respect, I knew it was worth it. Some relationships, I'd learned, cost more to maintain than to lose. And losing Brad had saved me. So that's my story. The story of how I took back my house and lost my son, or perhaps lost a son who was never really there. What did I learn? That love without respect is worthless. That family members can be the ones who hurt you most. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I don't know if I'll ever reconcile with Brad. Maybe someday, when he's truly changed. Maybe never. But I know this. I'd make the same choice again. What would you do? Would you forgive or stand firm? I hope you never have to find out. Thank you for listening to an old woman's story. Leave a comment if this resonated with you. Subscribe if you want to hear how life turns out. And remember, you teach people how to treat you. I taught my son too late. Don't make my mistake.